The news today, which we're very excited to announce, is that Pine Sports, the company that Vijay founded, and SharpSports, the company that I founded with my co-founder Sam, have merged. And the goal is to bring one kind of infrastructure-based product with a B2C and a B2B brand on top of it to market.
Hey, this is Jesse here, and you're about to hear my discussion with Vijay from Pine Sports, which is your personal AI sports companion. Vijay is joined by previous podcast guest Ryan Murphy from SharpSports to publicly announce here for the first time the recent merger of their two companies, which we unpack from a number of different angles. We also discuss the development and capabilities of jaXon, which is Pine's AI technology, their perspective on the betting tools category that Pine Sports competes in, and what it's like working with pro athletes like Marshawn Lynch as investors and partners. This episode provides a super insightful look into how M&A happens at the early stage, and I hope you enjoy hearing Vijay and Ryan break it all down as much as I did. The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. Positionless marketing gives every marketer the power to execute any marketing task instantly and independently, and Optimove Ignite Plus is its program to support early-stage iGaming startups. If you're attending SBC Summit in Lisbon this September, you can find Optimove at stand A555 and tell them that Betting Startups sent you to receive your first month free. All right, we are back here on the Betting Startups podcast for the last episode before the 2025 NFL regular season kicks off, and companies across the entire industry are doing final code commits, testing paywalls, firing up their social media teams for another huge season that the American Gaming Association estimates will generate a staggering $30+ billion in handle at regulated US books. So needless to say, the stakes are high, including for today's guests who look to capture a share of the action this season. Joining me is Vijay from Pine Sports, which we'll be focusing on for this episode. And riding shotgun with him in this episode is Ryan from SharpSports, who is a credentialed alumni of the Betting Startups podcast, having first appeared, I think, on episode 20 over 3 years ago. I have to look at the exact date, Ryan. But welcome back to you. And Vijay, welcome to the podcast for the first time. Just to check in here at the starting line, though, Vijay, how are you feeling here ahead of the new season kicking off? Presumably some combination of nerves and excitement. What's the mindset and vibe here a couple days out?
Feeling great, actually. I think we're really ready for the season. We've been hard at work all summer, building new tools and, getting jaXon, which I think we're going to talk about a lot this episode, ready for football and then, basketball, hockey, and everything as we progress through the season. But first, just wanted to thank you so much for having me on. I've been a fan since, before episode 20. I've been listening to you guys for a few years now, and so many gems, so much that I've learned in the process. And I feel like I have a community here because of you and the podcast. So excited to be on and excited to be a part of that community.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Vijay. Great to finally have you on. I know we've been chatting for a couple of years now, and the time's finally lined up for you to get on here. So excited to dive into things. But before we do that, guys, at this point, some of the audience is probably wondering what the heck Ryan is doing here in an episode featuring a company not named SharpSports. So let's not bury the lead here. You do have some news that I believe is being shared publicly for the first time here. So Ryan, maybe I can kick it over to you. Why don't you give us some insight as to why you're here on this episode featuring Pine Sports?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, thanks for having me back. I won't assume that everyone has heard episode 20, the famous episode 20. So just to give a little bit of background, I'm CEO of SharpSports. We're a business that provides bet syncing software. We started in 2020, and our goal is to basically build the plaid for sports betting. So we provide the bet tracking tools that companies like OddsJam, RotoWire, Covers.com is another customer that they all use. And we've been doing that for, 4.5 years now. The news today, which we're very excited to announce, is that Pine Sports, the company that Vijay founded, and SharpSports, the company that I founded with my co-founder Sam, have merged recently. And the goal is to bring one kind of infrastructure-based product with a B2C and a B2B brand on top of it to market. So, to give some background there, I met Vijay probably a couple years ago. I had heard from multiple people that he was a really smart guy that I should get to know. We started chatting, and I was really impressed by the ambitions of Pine Sports and how quickly that they were shipping new products and also how loyal of a fan base they had. Around the same time, we were thinking at SharpSports how great it would be to have a B2C brand that we could utilize. We were building great products for our customers, but we also thought that there were some opportunities that we were missing because One, we couldn't really always validate new tools that we wanted to build directly. It would take a sales cycle to get a new customer to use it, get them to implement it, and then get feedback from their customers before we could iterate. So we wanted to have that B2C exposure for quicker iteration. And then we also were really invested in this idea of personalization. So we're providing really personalized data, and Vijay and his team were really well positioned to take advantage of that. So we're really excited to bring this new version of SharpSports to the market with this B2C tool involved.
Well, congratulations, guys, first and foremost. That's a momentous milestone in each of your respective journeys, and now obviously moving forward as a combined entity. Vijay, why did this make sense from your perspective, given the trajectory you're on with Pine Sports? I know you've been working with Ryan and his team for some time on more of a commercial basis, but why did this, merger make sense to you and, aligning more closely than just that commercial relationship?
Sure. I'm happy to answer that, but I think I want to provide a little background on what Pine Sports is, and I think it'll make a lot more sense. So I started Pine Sports, almost probably 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been a while. And I started, really, I was a computer science major in undergrad, but pivoted to law school after PASPA got overturned. Live in New Jersey and would have monthly poker nights with some guys in the neighborhood and saw them betting nonstop during poker nights and just on gut instinct, making losing bets or on what somebody on Twitter would say. And, what I wanted to do, and this was real early days, was build like a tool that was like a quant in your pocket, or we were focused on mobile too, like from day one, and give analytics to my buddies who were betting and try to give them the ability to do complicated things in a simple way. We first started with the ability to make your own AI models to predict game outcomes. Player props then became incredibly popular over the past few years. So we built a player prop tool that allowed people to get projections on player props based on the selection of historic data they decided was important. And then I made a pivot about a year or 2 years ago now, to try to build a large language model on top of all these tools and build additional tools so that the interface is really you just asking a question to a large language model. How does LeBron James do against East Coast teams on the road with 2 days rest? And it'll access Pine's tools and do those calculations for you and answer that question for you. And the issue I was having was you really need good, clean data. You really need to be inside of that data so that when you're giving these LLMs access to it, you need 100% control over the data. Ryan and I have a common investor. I was explaining this problem and, he said, why don't you reach out to Ryan? Ryan's building out all of this stuff, bet tracking, lines, all of this stuff he has. So why don't you work with him, develop that close relationship? You're probably going to get better service than anyone else. And we've been doing that for a while now. And then as we work together, we just really enjoyed working together. From that perspective, having access to Ryan and Sam and their data and being so close to them to be able to understand exactly the APIs, to understand the back end, all of that really helped in developing jaXon. So it was a no-brainer for me.
Awesome. Sounds like a true 1 + 1 = 3 situation. Ryan, tell us a bit about how the merged companies will operate moving forward. You alluded to it a few minutes ago in your answer there. Sounds like they'll operate as parallel brands, but unpack that a little bit and just give us some insight on what we can expect to see moving forward as a merged entity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the SharpSports B2B business will continue to operate in the same way. Still the primary revenue driver of the business for now, and essentially provide all the same products, but the benefit and the changes that we'll see are just a lot more new products that are related to the things that Vijay is building. So to give you an example, Pine Sports or jaXon customer will say to Vijay, hey, I would love more advanced analytics for NFL, right? And we'll, on the SharpSports side of things, build out the databases and the API services related to that as B2B tools first. So really Pine will be the alpha customer for those tools. We'll go through a few iteration cycles and get some feedback directly within Pine before we're able to provide it as a B2B tool. So then by the time it goes to market as a B2B tool, it's been validated, vetted, tested, et cetera. Advanced analytics for NFL is a good example of that we just released ahead of this NFL season. Another example is a white labeled version of the LLM that Vijay has built that we have, 4 customers in beta for currently. And, I think that's going to be potentially a really big product for us. When we built bet tracking, that was kind of a novel new idea in the industry 5 years ago. Now it seems like a must-have feature for most companies. And we think the same will be true of the AI chat implementation. I think that all of these sites, all of these tools will need a way for users to interface with them with natural language. And our goal is to be a big part of providing that infrastructure.
Awesome, guys. And the last question here on the merger before we dive into Pine Sports. You mentioned, Vijay, that the conversation started under the encouragement of a mutual investor that you share. But I know each of you, have your own cap tables with different investors. They don't perfectly overlap. Give us a little bit of inside baseball or a look behind the curtain, if you will, on what it looks like to engage your investors and really get that buy-in from your stakeholders to pursue a deal like this, right? Like, what was that like? Did you have to do a lot of convincing? Did it just make so much sense for everybody from day one? It was a non-conversation. Yeah, again, share what you can about just that process of engaging and getting that buy-in.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helped that we had some shared investors who were supportive from day one. I know on our side, on the SharpSports side of things, we went to a few of our more active advisors and investors and talked them through our thought process there. And first thing was to kind of think through it with them, really, as a partner before even deciding, yes, this does make sense, right? So it wasn't necessarily a decision that we made and then pitched to them. It was something that we talked to in partnership with them. We weren't able to talk to it with all of our investors ahead of time, but we had enough reasons that we thought it made sense. Vijay had also built an incredible business, something that was growing really quickly, like I mentioned, a really loyal user base and some really cool tools. And clearly there's just one missing puzzle piece, which was that infrastructure that we provided. And then, yeah, the customers like OddsJam and RotoWire of ours who have both had successful exits doing the same thing, right? Not necessarily through merger, but through building internally, both a B2B and B2C brand helped a lot as well. So yeah, it was really, a partnership with the subset of investors and then just kind of educating the rest of them. And I think everyone saw that it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and on my end, the nice thing on my end with Pine was I was a lawyer for almost 20 years, so I self-funded a large majority of it. We only had two investors on the cap table prior to the merger. One was the common investor and a frequent guest on your show. It was Chris Grove's company. And the other is a quant fund that I used to work with as a lawyer, Tower Research Capital. They have a venture arm, and they are a high-frequency trading quant fund that uses data in the same way that we are for sports betting. They're doing it for all markets across the globe. So they fully understood the need for data, the need for clean data, the need for a data partner. It was, it was a no-brainer for them.
All right, guys. Well, let's now double click on Pine Sports and do a bit of a deep dive on what you have in market and more importantly, what's coming here. To start with Vijay, you introduced it a little bit here in the introduction, but again, just for the benefit of the audience, can you just give us a bit of a high concept overview? How do you describe Pine Sports? What's the value proposition and ultimately what makes it unique?
Sure. So I gave you a little bit about the evolution, but right now the core tool that we have is called jaXon, and it's our AI model. It is an LLM that you can ask anything about sports. It's specialized to and optimized for sports. So we've built right now probably 30 or 40 different tools that jaXon has access to that can answer just about any question you can think of. If you're in a survivor pool, we have a tool that jaXon can use to look out all 17 weeks and try to build out an optimized picks for you as you're progressing through the season. And, if you're saying, hey, I'm going to see the Eagles game on game 7, so I want to pick the Eagles on game 7, it can do that. It has access to the advanced NFL stats that Ryan was mentioning, to fantasy stats, we've built our own news search engine. So the way I think about it is jaXon is a butler and Ryan is providing this gigantic library. And what you can do is ask questions, and jaXon in literally a few seconds will go out, do all the calculations, go fetch all the data that's necessary and provide you that answer. So ideally, it's your one-stop shop sports companion.
Love it. And you alluded there, Vijay, to the fact that jaXon in totality, is actually a number of different tools. Sounds like dozens of different tools internally underneath the hood of it all, which puts you squarely in this betting tools category, right? This is a category within the wider ecosystem, which is growing fast. I mean, I feel like a week hardly goes by where another new tool isn't launching. I guess as you're bringing, this to market, you're now aligned with Ryan and SharpSports. You're positioning yourself to, really own the category. How do you view the overall category, both from like a TAM and an opportunity perspective, as well as just from a competitive landscape perspective?
Sure. So, we were one of the earliest, but there's a lot of great tools out there. I know you've had the guys from props.cash on, the guys from outlier.bet. Those are fantastic tools. The unabated guys are just good people and building great tools. I think there is room for a lot of good tools in the space. We've been on the same journey, But I think no one has really tapped into the casual market, that market of just a sports bettor who's placing a bet on their favorite team at the sports bar. There's the unabateds that are amazing for real professional sports bettors who really want to get in the weeds and odd shop across hundreds of books and all of those things. And then on the other side of the spectrum, which are companies that you don't have on, but they're cappers out there that just provide bets and people pay them money for bets. And, what we want to do is provide as advanced analytics as we possibly can, but through a chat interface. So you could be sitting at the bar and getting the same value from jaXon as you would be out of the highest end tool out there. So our goal is to tap that casual market, which I think has been largely untapped to date. And the TAM there is enormous. As you said up front, the amount of handle there is right now is bigger than ever. Everyone's betting. Everything you see related to sports is betting related. So if we can be the betting companion, we think there's enormous opportunity there.
And what advantages do you believe that the interface that you're coming to market with, which is essentially a chat interface, what do you think that gives you vis-a-vis tools like Unabated, which are fantastic, but arguably are for a more sophisticated audience? And if you are really trying to position Pine Sports to be that bridge that onboards, more casual bettors into the ecosystem, and that's the tool by which they do that, how much of an advantage do you believe that is, and all of the technical R&D under the hood that's gone into developing what is ultimately a pretty simple interface, yet a powerful one? Just again, like as you're coming to market, really getting the name out there now, what advantage do you think that gives you, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, well, you saw the enormous growth of ChatGPT, and I think this chat interface is something that people are very used to now. Casual people are, it's 700 million monthly or weekly actives on ChatGPT. So this is an interface that everyone is used to. A lot of people, when betting on sports, they just don't want to look at spreadsheets. And I've been building a tool for 4 years that was all spreadsheets and a lot of model building and things like that. So our goal is to really take all of the complicated stuff and put it behind this interface that people are now growing more and more used to. And it also gives us the ability to, again, build out all sorts of different tools that if you're thinking about doing a different UI for each different tool, you would be driving yourself crazy and you would have the most cluttered website in the world. This allows you to build like a survivor pool optimizer, a fantasy draft optimizer, sit-em stardom tool, a tool for player props, a tool for games, all in one simple chat interface. So you don't have to worry about the UX for the other stuff.
So, the vast majority of these betting tools are subscription-based. Some percentage of those do have an affiliate component to them. I guess for Pine Sports, Vijay, what's the business model you're looking at? How do you differentiate between subscription revenue and affiliate revenue? And ultimately, to you, what do you see as being a more compelling revenue channel for Pine Sports?
Yeah, for Pine Sports, I think right now for jaXon specifically, it is the subscription channel. We were originally a free site. We did have some affiliate and partnership deals, but our goal was always product first and customer first. We have 10,000 people in our Discord. I'm on Zooms with users all the time. Even one of our first users is an employee of the site. So we've been very user-centric. And then with the LLM on top of that, it's not your typical SaaS model where the costs are the same no matter how many users you have. Our costs scale with users, so we kind of had to move to subscription, but it aligns with our core mentality, which is product and user first.
And just to talk about jaXon for a minute here, you've been developing this for a number of years now, as alluded to. What's the R&D journey been like? And I guess ultimately, we all are at this point mostly familiar with the term large language model, yet very few of us, myself included, have any idea what that actually means to build one, yet you built one. Just give us some insight into that journey to stand all of this up, the R&D that goes into developing this, the underlying technology, and just kind of what that journey's been like from a technical perspective.
I started this a little over 2 years ago from the pivot, and if I knew how hard it would be, I don't know if I would have done it, but we're on the other side. So yeah, it was incredibly difficult. These large language models are so smart in some ways and so brittle in others. So the pipelines you have to build to give it access to do all the work that we want it to do, to be able to answer every particular question that you could come up with, was incredibly difficult. It took a long, long time. It was a lot of trial and error. It was just a lot of pain. And that was one of the conversations I was having with Chris Grove, which led to the meeting with Ryan. But now we're over the hump and we're feeling pretty good.
All right. And I'd be remiss to not talk briefly about user acquisition. Obviously, being a consumer product, subscription-based, right? You need to reach that scale, that critical mass. Yet acquiring users cheaply and effectively is notoriously challenging. How are you thinking about user acquisition? Now, obviously, you have an installed user base already, which gives you a fantastic head start here. But I guess as you're looking to reach that next stage of growth, what are some of the tactics, channels, strategies you're thinking about to really drive that user acquisition?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. Beyond the loyal fan base that Vijay has built, we're kind of going with a mix of organic growth and strategic partnerships. We invest a decent amount of time into content creation. So, we've got social media videos, we've got a newsletter, that had over 60,000 subscribers, got our blog where we post different posts showcasing some of the interesting questions that jaXon can answer, along with our own editorializing to build that connection with the audience. And then we also, have a lot of strategic partnerships. So we've actually brought on some higher profile current and ex-athletes as partners, advisors, and investors in many cases. So, working with Marshawn Lynch, Michael Robinson, Jonathan Stewart, Ryan Leaf, Steve Smith Sr., Kevin O'Neill, who's an NBA coach for a long time. And they have great platforms. They're all very ambitious and competitive, with their media careers as much as they were with their sports careers. And to give you an example of how one of these has worked out, we're the official AI sponsor of the Get Got podcast, which is Marshawn Lynch's new podcast venture. We're always exploring new opportunities with some of those investors and advisors and within their network as well to find ways to partner with them to bring this tool to a new audience as opposed to necessarily just relying on paid acquisition strategies.
And just to piggyback off of that, Ryan, I mean, you just name checked there some tier one A-list professional athletes. We're all very familiar with their performance on their field of play or courts or whatever it might be based on their sport. But working with them in this context in a professional capacity, both to promote the Pine Sports product, but also in some cases, as you referenced, being involved in the business on the cap table or as investors or advisors, what's it like to collaborate with professional athletes in a business context, right? That is something we're all less familiar about. What's been your journey and experience so far working with these folks in that capacity?
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it's entertaining at times for sure and inspiring in a lot of ways. Some of them have, business guys who handle all those conversations for them. And then, we kind of build our own relationship with them, but it's more just about them getting to know us as people that they trust and think can execute on their ambitions. But a lot of them are really intimately involved in these investments. Like they're really diving headfirst into the business world. They're looking to learn as much as possible. So that's been really interesting to see. And also they have had successful careers behind them in a completely different fields. And they kind of just bring their authentic selves in a way that I think a lot of people who solely started their career in business, maybe don't feel the freedom to. So it's fun to hear all their different stories and to get to know them overall. But yeah, I mean, it's been great to see how they really approach it the same way that they approach watching film, right? Getting to know their competition. Like they are diving in headfirst, a lot of them, into what makes the business world tick.
And looking ahead, guys, in terms of just capital, are you thinking right now about, new growth capital? Are you good with where you're at right now? I guess just sort of how do you think about capitalizing this next stage of growth that you're now entering together with Pine Sports?
Yeah, so we did a small raise just open to some of those more strategic investors. We're not doing a large capital raise at the moment. We feel that with existing B2B business, we're able to fund most of the customer acquisition strategies that we have. I think it's something that we'd explore down the road. Obviously NFL season is where we'll see a lot of the success in customer acquisition. So probably see where we land after that. But we're always open to strategic investors, people like, the Marshawn Lynches of the world who can bring an audience and a platform that can help us promote the B2C tool.
Awesome. Let's zoom out a little bit from Pine Sports specifically, but I do want to stick with you for a minute here, Ryan. Look, as I said at the outset here, it's been over 3 years, which feels like a lifetime ago since you were on the pod. And at that time, SharpSports really was in its infancy as a startup. Lots has happened over that time, including the fact the industry around us has evolved quite dramatically in a very short period of time. Curious to get your reflections, I guess, since launching, how do you see the industry evolving? How has it evolved? And more importantly, I guess, how has the SharpSports opportunity evolved, as the industry has changed around us over the last few years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's changed in a lot of ways. I think there's a few different themes that we've seen just looking at our customers and what they're up to. One is that, 80% of our customers when we first started were affiliate-based revenue companies, right? That's how they made most of their money. That has obviously changed quite a bit over the last couple of years, and a lot of them have had to transition to subscription-based models. So, the bar for ROI of investing in a new tool like bet syncing with SharpSports has changed a bit. And, it needs to be something that's tied directly to driving that subscription revenue or driving churn reduction. So that's definitely been a big change. It's something we've been working with our customers on closely. Obviously, the regulatory environment has changed a ton, right? We've seen the rise of just regulated sports books by state. There's a huge explosion of new states regulating sports books. And we saw Prize Picks, Underdog, Fliff, and some of these sweepstakes companies come in and, they've seen their own regulatory headwinds, but they're able to expand the TAM a bit there. And now we see the rise of, the Kalshis and Predictits of the world, and even see FanDuel and Robinhood doing deals. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. And I think the opportunity of a federally regulated sports betting environment to some extent will be a huge win that lifts all of our sales because it gives us access to new markets. So that's really exciting and something that we're thinking about really closely in relation to jaXon as well, right? We're working on an integration with Kalshi currently, and obviously the tool is mostly based on sports betting, but you can bet on anything. I saw someone who won a parlay of all of the P. Diddy, court case outcomes with SGA to win MVP, right? They won like $45,000 or something like that. So we don't have those types of tools yet in jaXon, but who knows? Based on how the market is reacting to those types of opportunities, maybe that's something we integrate. And then, I think, we've seen, like I mentioned before, we've seen bet syncing become a novel concept, as something that's kind of a must-have in all these different apps. And we think the same will happen with AI-based tools. We've seen a lot of people put AI in their URL or on their website, but not always exactly clear what that means or how it's being used. So I think we're betting big on just the chat interface as the new way that people will interact with a lot of these tools. And hopefully we can help drive adoption of some of that infrastructure.
Awesome, guys. Look, as I say, kickoff is at this point just hours away, really. Vijay, as you look ahead to this new NFL season, what do you focus on? What are the priorities? And really, when you get to the end of the season and look back on it, what would you deem to be a successful season for Pine Sports?
Yeah, we've been heads down building for the last 2 months. So I think we're seeing this NFL season as jaXon's coming out party. We've partnered, as Ryan said, with Marshawn Lynch's podcast, with a bunch of athletes. So our goal is to really drive subscriptions, to drive people to learn and know about jaXon. So I think at the end of the season, our focus is really marketing, growth, and user acquisition. So for us, a successful season is if you see that, start seeing that hockey stick growth as we progress through the season.
And if we extend the timeline out a little bit further here, let's say 5 years, you're looking in your crystal ball, in your wildest dreams, where's Pine Sports in 5 years' time, and kind of where does it sit within the broader ecosystem?
I think I would love to see jaXon as your AI sports companion. It is the AI for sports. If you try to use like a ChatGPT or even a Perplexity for sports specific content, because the data moves so fast, you just don't get good answers. You can't ask ChatGPT what the line is for a particular bet. It's just not going to give it to you. That's where we see our lane. So in 5 years, we want to be the companion for everyone. And we're also building out a lot of deep personalization. So I'm actually in the process of building out memory for jaXon. So it'll know who your favorite teams are, who your favorite players are. So it'll start to learn you a little bit better, start to speak in ways that you react to better and start to understand you. And it could really be that AI companion for all things sports, not just betting, but fantasy and for just sports fans.
And I want to circle back before we get out of here, guys. One thing I should have asked you earlier, but I didn't. So let me write that wrong. Look, you have all of these big ideas, Vijay, for Pine Sports as a B2C product. jaXon right now is powering a lot of really cool stuff and more cool stuff to come, much of which is now powered by SharpSports and the underlying infrastructure that Ryan and his team have built. Now that you've merged up, how are you guys thinking about not cannibalizing your B2C business with Pine Sports and really offering features that make Pine Sports unique to other potential competitors? How are you reconciling that, and kind of what's that look like as you've navigated those conversations?
That's a good question. Something we discuss every day. There's, we are white labeling some of this, but I think a lot, jaXon is our core brand. It's my baby. So it's something we discuss every day. I think a lot of the things we built for jaXon are no-brainers for B2B type products. For example, we're now in discussions with a couple of top content providers to provide AI content for some sites. A lot of the tools that we're building out can be used by others, but it is something we're constantly wrestling with. Like, how do we stay unique while truly servicing our B2B clients? Because, as Ryan said, B2B clients are a top priority and never want to move away from that, but we also want to make sure that jaXon's unique. And right now, we're the only chatbot interface for the sports space. So that's where we think our secret sauce is.
Yeah, and I'll echo that and say that one of the reasons that we thought this made sense as a collaboration was because jaXon as a tool is very unique and isn't directly competitive with any of the features that some of our other customers have. It is offering tools in the sports betting space to the and in many cases the same user base, but it's not a direct feature that any of our existing customers have today. So we think it actually will help them out as we give them access to some of that feature set. But ultimately, like Vijay said, he is laser focused on the Pine Sports user base, on building this AI tool and staying a step ahead. But in this AI world, things move very, very quickly. So, we think that while it's the case today that none of our customers have it, we're sure they will in the future. But we look at it, people like OddsJam and RotoWire, like we mentioned, and I think there's definitely room for providing both the B2B services while also having exposure on the B2C side.
All right, guys, going to hit you with a few rapid fire questions and then we'll wrap it up here. I'm looking for answers from both of you. Quick ones here. First one is, when you get up in the morning, check your phone. What's the first app you're opening? Vijay, we'll start with you.
It's Slack. We're always talking on Slack. So want to see what happened while I was, I'm older than these guys. I have kids. I'm in bed early, but up early. So kind of want to see what happened overnight. So Slack for me.
Yeah, so I just became a father about 3 months ago. So mine is
Congrats.
Thank you. So I'm opening up Nanit, which is our baby monitor app, to see what the baby's up to when I wake up. So that'll change soon, I'm sure. But yeah.
You're looking more alert than I did when my kid was 3 months old, Ryan. So credit to you for that. Next rapid fire question here, guys. Ryan, we'll start with you on this one. Pretend you didn't have a 3-month-old at home and you were going out to the karaoke lounge tonight. What song would you be singing?
Ooh, I like Seal, Kiss from a Rose, get in touch with my sensitive pride a little bit. Yeah.
Power ballad. I love it.
I would go with Sublime, Santeria. That's my go-to.
Right on. Last one here, guys. Vijay, if you could be anybody else for one day, dead or alive, who would it be?
That's a good question. I'm a data scientist and a scientist at heart. I think Albert Einstein and relativity. I read his biography, read all these books about him. I'd love to get inside his brain and think the way he thinks for just a minute. That would be amazing.
Wow. Yeah, it's a good answer. I was going to say Micah Parsons, fresh off that big contract. But yeah, I was thinking more of the athlete world. Between that and Muhammad Ali, always a boxing fan. And yeah, it'd be fun to be that quick for a day.
Classic answers, guys. All right. For people listening that want to check out Pine Sports and or reach out to either of you guys to discuss anything they've heard here that's piqued their interest, quickly plug the best way for them to do all that.
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, but you can even email me, Vijay at Pine Sports. We're on X, so you can constantly check in our DMs. So, a lot of ways to contact us.
Yeah. Ryan Murphy on LinkedIn, Ryan at sharpsports.io. Feel free to drop me a note.
All right, gents. Well, look, I'll leave you to it. I know it's still crunch time, so you can get back to work here. Really appreciate you joining and sharing a little bit of insight into this merger. Congratulations once again, and wishing you guys a huge NFL season and a successful, many years to come together.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. It's great being on.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. Positionless marketing gives every marketer the power to execute any marketing task instantly and independently, and Optimove Ignite Plus is its program to support early-stage iGaming startups. If you're attending SBC Summit in Lisbon this September, you can find Optimove at stand A555 and tell them that Betting Startups sent you to receive your first month free.